Good morning and welcome. This is our Saturday morning live cybersecurity mentorship webinar. The group is titled CyberSecurity Sensei or CS-Sensei. And our purpose is to try and help people understand not only some of the intricacies of cybersecurity, but also the reasons why cybersecurity has to be there and why we need people with a good ethical foundation in order to make this secure connection for our computers, our networks, our offices, our corporations, etc. Good morning, Sister Taylor. I notice you just joined.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi. So I see that you are on the phone versus on the computer, so you won't be able to see my slide presentation, but hopefully you will still get this. Also, I do record this and play it back. I put it up on YouTube usually the day that I've recorded it. So you can also watch this and the slides and the people talking back and forth on YouTube after the fact, okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Next time, I'll most likely be online. I wasn't able this morning.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Okay. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about two main things this morning. The big one that I wanted to cover is called insider threats and insider risks. Nerman, you're the key student here. What is your thought on insider threats? Have you had any of that in your schooling?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, people who work like inside the company, I think people are, first of all, people are the biggest threat because people make a lot of mistake, and especially when people are working like and many people, I mean employees, I don't know, let's say like for any kind of business and company, they don't have enough training like regarding like security, information security.
Mm-hmm.
Then they make a lot of mistakes, like for example, people like trying to use like companies' devices to go to their Facebook page and to play games during the break, to do some Google search, which is bring a big risk to company, and then plugging in devices, personal devices, connecting to the organization's network, yeah, things like that.
Okay, very good. Yeah, your point is taken, and I think that's a great observation. People are frequently the biggest problem, and that is that, and you mentioned this, they either negligently or maliciously can do things that can cause harm to your organization's networks, data, etc. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a definition here, and these definitions, by the way, I didn't cite them, but they are commonly referred to. So, you know, I didn't cite where I copied these from, but an insider threat is a malicious threat to an organization that comes from people within the organization. Duh, insiders. But one of the other things that they talk about is like contractors and business associates. What happens if you give somebody access to your supply line stuff so that they can transfer their invoices over to you? And oh, by the way, that means they get to see the entire invoicing system for your company, and they see everybody else's invoices, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Next thing you know, they're pulling intelligence from something that you very innocently gave them access to, you know. So be aware that this does happen, and it is a very high percentage of time it can happen, and it's a high percentage of time that it is very destructive when it does. Okay, like it says down at the bottom, it says the threat may involve fraud. The theft of confidential or commercially valuable information, things like patent information, intellectual privacy information. What if I was working for like Northrop Grumman and I had come up with a new design for an engine that was going to be used for the next space shot, and it was my patent and I owned it, and somebody else gets a hold of it, takes all of my industrial materials, and next thing you know, the Soviet Union, well, now Russia or China, is launching a rocket that looks strangely identical to my patent design. And by the way, this has happened. I don't know if you guys, and I'm going to talk very briefly about intellectual property. When I talk about intellectual property, that basically means if a thought or idea originated with me, then I own that thought or idea. And therefore, I can manage who has access to it. I am legally responsible to be able to extract royalties from those people who use my idea, etc. That's called intellectual property, and it's mostly around U.S. patents. Well, here's the problem. Neither Russia, well, Russia's gone democratic, so let's just say the USSR, or China, which also includes North Korea and Cuba, are Soviet or communist or socialist. What that basically means is, for example, in China, their laws relating to intellectual property are much different than ours, because everyone in communism, everyone works for the state. The state is responsible for everyone. So therefore, if you come up with a new idea, it's the state that owns it, not you, the member. So if there are hacking attempts from China that go into the United States and steal intellectual property data and take it back to China for China to use, China is not upset about that. All right? That's the difference between a company or a country that's built on capitalist approaches. You know, it's your money. You get to do what you want to with it. You can spend it or blow it however you want. You can invest it where you want, etc. And places like China, where they say, we'll take care of you. And then everything belongs to the government. All right? So like this talks about the threat of theft of commercially valuable information. One of the largest espionage groups, or some of the largest espionage groups, are doing it for commercial reasons. They're doing it to make money and to steal secrets for their country. Okay? Theft of intellectual property or the sabotage of computer systems. Okay? So an insider risk refers to the risk that a trusted or authorized person will participate in a behavior that causes damage to their employer. In other words, somebody inside, like you said, somebody inside your network goes rogue. They're hired to do one thing, but oh, by the way, they've got this little side business or whatever. True story, when I first arrived at my employer and started working for them, I heard that they had just had a pretty big legal affair with somebody who was up on, one of the upper floors in one of those little indistinct offices. Nobody, went and knocked on the door or whatever. And this person was using their government computer and a government CD burner to make movies, copies of movies that they would then pirate and sell inside my office building. So it does happen. And, they had this wonderful little industry going where they were selling pirated CDs that they had put together using their government computer. So just so you know, the insider risk is for real. It's for real. So there are two main, by the way, Sister Taylor, if you have any questions, go ahead and stop me and ask. But I sort of go at a fast pace here because we're recorded and you can play it back later. But if you have a question, go ahead and ask.
Yes, sir. There's a lot of questions, but I just thought of that. I said, I'm going to have to review this again.
Okay.
But I'm
Fair
observing.
enough. All right. So there are two main, if you want to call it, activities, and one is, and it's based on intent. All right. So one is malicious, and those are the guys you think about that are, make it in the movies and stuff. They knowingly and intentionally steal, misuse, or destroy your data. Okay, those are the network spies, the disgruntled employees, those sorts of things. And those are the ones that make the movies. Yeah, Nerman.
Yes. How can we call those people like who are still like threat to company when they're fired? Sometimes people, they still have access maybe for a few days or even for forever. Like some companies, they don't really good job. Like they fire someone and the person still have like those privileges, can access the network system, computer system, database, something like that. And I heard many stories actually about this. Like people are angry like on their manager or something. They got fired and they do some bad things in order to like you said, sabotage or something just to hurt company. So how can you call those people like? So I mean, are they like outsider threats or?
Well, no, they're still considered insider threats because they have access into the network or enterprise. It's still considered an insider threat even if they have been fired. And, oh, by the way, all it takes is one of those for a company to realize that their security policies must immediately change, provided that they live through it. In other words, there have been activities that literally cause a company to go bankrupt. Close shop. They're no longer doing business as a result of these sorts of things. I can remember, and this is many years ago, but I can remember one particular person. I was a contractor manager, and this person was one of my employees, and the FBI found this guy. I didn't know about it, and I can remember that the FBI, brought me in and grilled me about this guy, and said, "Did you know that he's stealing hardware?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And they said, "Yeah, right under your nose." And they showed me. This guy was. I was in Washington D.C. working for the government as a contractor. And this guy was one of my employees, and he was stealing laptops, driving them down to North Carolina, and selling them at a pawn shop. And the pawn shop, this guy got really negligent in his vigilance to do this, and he was like leaving the DOD stickers on the laptops. And so what happened was, the pawn shop owner called the FBI, and I can remember my last correspondence with this gentleman. I mean, he was a father, had kids, and my last correspondence was an email to his Yahoo account that said, "I have been advised by the FBI to direct you to turn yourself into the nearest law enforcement office immediately. If you do not, then you will be considered a felony fugitive. Have a nice day, Scotty." That sort of thing. This does happen. And like it says, malicious doesn't mean I'm mean, but it means that I'm abusing my privileges. I'm abusing the trust that someone has placed in me to put me near resources that I then, steal. So it does happen. It occurred with me. The other one that was malicious. The other one is accidental. And you notice negligent is in the middle of those three. And you see my little call out down there. I've got a war story about this one because this is something that I did. I was working in the Pentagon, and I was at one end of the Pentagon, and the servers were at the other end of the Pentagon. And they say you can walk from one place to another place, from one office to another inside the Pentagon in 7 minutes or less. Anywhere. 7 minutes or less. Well, I was at this end, and the servers were at this end, so I was using a remote access tool to do server work, server maintenance, and I was a sysadmin and that sort of thing. But the tool I was using was not configured properly for servers, because one of the things that you're not allowed to do remotely with a good tool is down the server. You can't, in some cases, you can't power off a server remotely. Well, this was the same tool I used on the desktop workstations, and I could do it with them, and the same tool was installed over on the servers. And one day, in the middle of the day, on a weekday, Scotty remotely clicked on the start menu, shut down, yes, on the Secretary of Defense's email server.
Wow.
And so the moment I did it, I was like, no! There was nothing I could do to back out of it. So I ran from one end of the Pentagon to the other, jumped into the server room and pushed the power button to turn it back on. But, that was a case of accidental denial of service. I didn't mean to do it. I was just too fast. I wasn't thinking, blah, 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 blah. This is what I do every day on my computer. So, blah, blah, blah. Start menu, shut down, yes.
Memory took over.
And yeah, my habitual state caused me to be negligent and down the Secretary of Defense's unclassified email for about 20 minutes. Happens. Okay? So anyway, I wanted to share with you guys this from Tessian.com. You can look this up. It's a web page that they put together. I think it's very helpful. But it says, insider threat examples, 17 real examples of insider threats. Real examples. So if you want to, look this up. This is from March of this year. 17 real examples. In fact, I'll put it into our chat. And if you want, you guys can follow along with me. I'm going to cover this real quickly, but you guys can probably take a look at it any other time at your leisure. But here we go. 17 real-time examples of insider threats. Okay, here's one. The employee who exfiltrated data. Do you know what exfiltration means, right? Take it from within the network and move it outside the network. Exfiltrated data after being fired or furloughed. Disgruntled employee. Oh, by the way, I'm sort of going to talk about this. The procedures within my organization to remove people's access, whether it be as customers or privileged access. The procedures, there are two different kinds. One is if it's a normal moving on, employee resigns, have a nice day, or they, have retired or whatever. And the other is a removal under adverse circumstances. And the difference is the time frame. If somebody is just retiring or resigning or whatever, got hit by a truck and they're no longer coming into work or whatever, you're allowed to do it within a certain number of hours. If it's under adverse circumstances, in other words, this person, stole money from the office and they're being fired. It's called adverse circumstances, and you do it immediately. I've done this. I literally called up the sysadmins and said, I'm firing this person. I'm escorting him to the door. Please lock all of his accounts right now. I'll wait. And they locked the accounts, And then I walk over to the employee's desk and say, get up, hand me your badge, let's go to security, and you're leaving. And I've done that. So adverse circumstances dictate that you need to do it faster. You don't give them 2 weeks notice. You give them, notice of, you can't even finish your coffee. Let's go. Grab your car keys. I'm taking your badge. You're following me. Walk to the door. Well, what if I don't care. We'll worry about that later. And sometimes, they can be helpful. The circumstances were that they, stole money at the or were accused of stealing money at the office. So you had to fire them, but they were being very cooperative and they were working on a project. So you can call them up and talk to them about it and say, you're on 2 weeks notice, but you're not coming back to work. Your access is pulled, but you're not coming back to work. That sort of thing. There are ways that you can do it to where it's not sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, or, death by firing squad. There's space in between those where you may be able to work and get your employee. Good morning, Harvinder. Good to see you. I know you may not be able to talk. So next one, the employee who sold company data for financial gain.
Good morning.
Hey, sold company data for financial gain. In other words, it's expensive to be in a business, and maybe somebody can get a little bit of side change by selling it to somebody that may need it. Another one, the employee who sold trade secrets. That's the one I was telling you about, the intellectual property discussion. If there's something special, let's say a security firm out there that has this product that they're selling for $10,000 or whatever, and it's based on a certain number of algorithms, and all of a sudden the guy who programmed the algorithms quits this company and stands up another company that happens to do some of the very same things. That's called stealing trade secrets, and those people can be prosecuted. Next one, the employee who exposed 250 million customer records. This says 250 million Microsoft customer records were exposed on the open web. And this says it occurred because the employees failed to secure the databases properly. That was negligence. Next one, the nuclear scientist who hijacked a supercomputer to mine Bitcoin. This was a Soviet thing. They were trying to make a little extra money, and they have all these great big monstrous supercomputers there. So they started doing their own little Bitcoin mining side business using the Soviet computers. Oh, I'm sorry, Russian computers. Next one, the employee who fell for a phishing attack. Happens all the time. Chris, did you hear at the last all hands how many people clicked the link?
Yes, and
just so you know, federal government agencies, all federal government agencies are required to conduct quarterly phishing exercises. It's that big of a deal. And the way they do it with our organization is they have an email that they've generated that looks like a phishing attack, which is supposed to look legitimate, but it violates one of those rules of vigilance that you're supposed to watch for: misspelling, coming from a Nigerian prince or whatever, and these contain links. And if you click on the link, it says your name and computer name has been recorded. We will contact you afterwards for training because you just fell for it. You tripped a trip line. And what was it? 800 people clicked it this time, Chris?
yes.
It was what was it? The UPS package?
Oh, so UPS package. You're talking about a different one.
Okay. Well, the one that our CIO mentioned
Yeah.
said 800 of his own people clicked on it, and were all sent to remedial training. And
800 is 800 too many. So
right.
that's my life.
And here's the thing: how many does it take to make a phishing attack successful? Just one.
Just one.
Just one. And so I remember back in 2017 when they had that NotPetya thing going around. In 2017, we had 6 people that clicked on it, and it was a Visual Basic attack in a Microsoft Word document that was embedded in a PDF, and every time you'd click on it, it would say a warning would come up and say, "Are you sure you want to do this? This could be insecure. This could be dangerous. Are you sure you want to do this?" And they were like, "Yes, yes, yes, yes." And they went all the way through all the warnings. 6 people went all the way through with this NotPetya, and it encrypted over 175,000 files in our organization in 2017. All it took was, one person, but in this case, 6 people did it. They ignored all the warnings. They're like, yeah, I'm too busy for that. Well, they fell for the attack. Here's another one. The work-from-home employees duped by a vishing scam. Vishing. What is vishing?
Is it a video phishing?
Mm-hmm. Yep. In case this was Twitter's admin tools. Changed the passwords of around 130 high-profile accounts, including those belonging to Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Kanye West, and used them to conduct a Bitcoin scam.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. It was the Twitter attack on the Democrats. So here's another one. The ex-employee who got 2 years for sabotaging data. This is the sort of thing that can happen a lot. Somebody's heading out the door, and they're like, well, I'll show them. I was a good employee, and they did me wrong, and so I'm going to destroy as much as I can, heading out the door. It's if you think about it, it's like the employee who's being walked out the door, and so they're so angry and so frustrated at it, they kick over the ashtray as they're heading out to the lobby. It's like, oh, I'm going to, mess up stuff on the way. Well, if it's a network employee, if they have privileged access, they've been left with elevated access, they can do stuff like this, and it's far more destructive than kicking over the ashtray in the lobby, San Jose resident, 2 years imprisonment after a court found he had accessed Cisco's systems without authorization, deploying malware that deleted over 16,000 user accounts and caused $2.4 million in damage. This person did not do it for personal gain. They did it because they were mad. Okay? Another one, the employee who took company data to a new employer for a competitive edge, stole intellectual information or patents, or the client base. We've got all these customers, and I take that customer, whatever the CDM tool is, or the customer service tool is, and took it with me. So all these people, oh yeah, well, we can do the same thing as them, but for 75% instead of 100%. We'll give you a 25% discount to come over to us, or whatever. Same thing. Next one, employee who stole a hard drive containing HR data. That happens all too frequently. HR data on the individuals, walk out the door with it, nobody even knows. And these days, how much data can you fit onto a micro SD card?
I don't know specifics, but I know it's a lot.
It is hundreds of gigabytes, and you can have it in your phone. Micro SD card. Hundreds of gigabytes.
Even like, I think like you can put like over like 1 terabyte now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now, like
I've seen those, but just so
Yeah.
you know, a lot of those, and you guys probably know this, but a lot of those, here, I've got one here. The micro SD cards, these little itty bitty guys are the ones we're talking about. I put it into a card reader. This is what the old SD card used to look like, and it was small. But this is even smaller. It fits into this, and you just plug it into the card reader slot on your computer. They can be very powerful, but you have to buy them from a reputable source, because these can contain malware. These can also, in order to make them look like you're talking the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte SD cards, micro SD cards, they have, whoever is trying to sell them, Chinese usually, they use compaction software to make it look like it's bigger than it is. And by doing so, you know, they used to call it disk doubler or that sort of thing. By doing so, these things corrupt real fast. So you got to buy, you know, if you're buying large capacity micro SD cards, do it from a reputable source, not from, you know, Yangshen Industries or whatever that, you know, you go, I don't know, but gosh, it's cheap. Well, it's cheap for a reason. Okay, here's another one. The employees leaking customer data. Unknown number of Amazon customers received an email stating that their email address had been disclosed by an Amazon employee to a third party. The employee had been fired, but Amazon changed their story later on, in which multiple individuals or bad actors stole employee data, customer data. Next one, employee offered a bribe by a Russian national. Happens frequently. Why do they have to sneak into your network and try and steal stuff when all they have to do is find somebody who's in financial problems, in marital problems, whatever, and walk up to them and say, you know, I might be able to help out here. You know, I can help you if you do a little bit for me. It's just this little database. It means nothing. It's old data. Who cares? Nobody's even using it anymore. You know, whatever the reasoning is they use, I'll give you money if you give me data. It's called a bribe. Next one, the ex-employee who offered 100 gigabytes of company data for $4,000. Data is exfiltrated. Somebody tries to sell it on the dark web. Well, guess who's out on the dark web too? All of the, NSA, FBI, they're all out there watching for this sort of thing. Tried to sell 100 gigabytes of company data for $4,000. Next one, the employee who accidentally sent an email to the wrong person. $800 misdirected emails are sent every year in organizations with 1,000 employees. 24 NHS employee, private details of 24 NHS employees were exposed after someone in HR accidentally sent an email to a team of senior executives that included mental health information and surgery information for these 24 employees. Oops, HR messed up. Here's another one. The employee who accidentally misconfigured access privileges. Oh yeah, these guys have this, these guys have this, these guys have this, and you're working with a whole bunch of different levels of data access, and somebody just gets in a hurry and or they don't, they think they remember the checklist. Why do you think in the FAA, pilots who may have had thousands of flights still must use written checklists? Because they can overlook something. Not intentionally, but it could be the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful flight. So accidentally misconfigured access privileges can occur. And how do you fix that? Training, written procedures, checklists, etc. Another one, the security officer who was fined $316,000 for stealing data and more. Former hacking his ex-employer's systems to steal its data, destroy its servers, deface its website, and copy its proprietary software to set up a rival company. People, I'm sorry to say this, but that is why the CyberSecurity Sensei program makes so much sense. People learn the exact same things in good classes and bad classes. People who are hired have the exact same information. The question is, are they willing to use it for the wrong reasons? And in CS-Sensei, we have that code of ethics, which I require each of you to read and adhere to, because I only train white hats. I only train the good guys. Now, could somebody still come here and learn this information and then go out and use it improperly? Yes. But they're doing it in contrary to the code of ethics that says, I will not do anything illegal, immoral, or unethical, or that will harm my employer. Okay, that's what the code of ethics means. And it is required for many certifications or membership in many professional organizations, codes of ethics. And it basically says you know what you are not supposed to be doing, and you agree that you're not going to do it. That's a code of ethics. So that was the 17. Any question before I go to the next slide and we start our next topic? I realize we covered it quickly. Okay. Another one, quick, we're going to talk about slow scan attacks. And, in your, well, if you got it here, I've got mine, the Security Plus Study Guide. They talk about attack vectors, they talk about port scanning, etc. But what they don't, and it's not in here, I checked, they don't talk about what's called slow scanning. We think about it as, oh yeah, well they checked all the ports on a particular firewall and found that these ports were available and were able to get into the DMZ and compromise the server. Okay, but one thing that they don't talk about is how intrusion detection systems let it pass. So let's talk about that. A slow scan attack is active scanning of computing and communication devices where two successive probe messages, in other words, here's one, and then here's another one from the same source, are spaced in time at least minutes, mostly hours, and possibly days apart. Slow scan. It's designed to avoid detection from intrusion detection system. It's supposed to get lost in the chatter, the day-to-day stuff that's going on your network, boop, and then a few hours later, boop. It is actually an attack reconnaissance that's occurring that your intrusion detection systems don't have thresholds low enough to catch it. like it says here, most serious attackers aren't going to advertise their intentions by performing a broad scan. You know, big scan, go. You know, that sort of thing. And everything just gets flooded with scan attempts. The smartest attackers will try and come in under your detection radar. There are lots of security tools out there that will scan a wide range of ports and IP addresses. In our Security Plus, in your exam, you need to know about Nmap and one other one I forget. Do you remember what it was, Chris? Okay. There are two tools they talk about. The biggest one is Nmap, N-M-A-P, which, by the way, is free. So anyway, most intrusion detection systems catch those broad scanning efforts, the fast scanning, scan this, scan this, scan this, scan this, scan this, scan this. They see that, and they recognize it, and they alert to it. Okay? Intrusion prevention systems will actually stop it as it's occurring. However, the most serious attackers aren't going to advertise their intentions by performing this type of scan. They'll go low and slow using half connection attempts to map out your available resources. If any of you have looked at the, I call it the life cycle of an attack, reconnaissance, initial exploitation, establish persistence, move laterally, and then collect, exfiltrate, or exploit. Most of these slow scans that I'm talking about occur during the reconnaissance phase, the first phase where they're trying to figure out if you are indeed vulnerable. Okay, make sense? Oops, back up a little bit. The reason I bring this up, and Chris knows about this, the reason I bring this up is that this week I was doing a project that required me to connect to a number of resources, and I sorted the resources according to IP address. I said, you know, .11, .12, .14, .20, and I was going in order and connecting to these resources, and I said, you know what? This has the same signature, if you will, as a slow scan attack. In other words, some system somewhere could have looked at what I was doing. It was legitimate. I was being asked to do it by my management, but I said, you know what? This looks, I mean, if I had configured an intrusion detection system, it would have looked for exactly what I was doing. And I said, so I literally ratted on myself. I sent an email to our computer incident response team. And I said, I just realized that what I'm doing could be caught by your intrusion detection systems. Here is all the information about my computer, IP address, MAC address, where I am on the network, etc., so that you can track every single packet that comes from me. And here's what I'm doing, and I'm connecting to systems like this. And oh, by the way, I'm doing this for a lot of systems, but I'm doing it sequentially. And the response I got back was typical, you know, spy versus spy stuff. They said, acknowledged. Thank you for sharing. Let us know when you're done. They did not say anything along the lines of, oh, that was you, or anything like that. They didn't acknowledge their capability. They didn't acknowledge whether or not I had tripped any sort of tripwires. They just said, thank you for sharing. Let us know when you're done. Okay, so I ratted on myself. I said, I could be coming up on your scanners. And I want to let you know this is what I'm doing and this is why. It had occurred one previous time with me. I was doing a particular project, and by the way, this project was for CS-Sensei, not for the government, but I happened to be sitting on the government computer on the weekend when I was doing it, and they said, popped up an alert, and they contacted me during the week and said, hey, we noticed that you were doing this. I'm like, yeah, you're right, I forgot. I was still on the VPN, and I wasn't supposed to be. So this sort of thing can occur. And by the way, I was very pleased that they had contacted me. It showed that we were properly configured. Yep, I was a bad guy. I made the mistake of still being connected to the network instead of just using my home network. Oops, my bad. Remember we talked about it can be either malicious or it can be accidental. Either way, stuff can happen. Any questions? Any comments?
I was listening to what exactly happened. So when you were doing your project before and you ratted on yourself, that was your internal eye noticing what you were doing with those IP addresses.
Yep.
And that was actually a good thing to rat on yourself so that if it did pop up, they would already be aware.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. In other words, I'm not a baddie. You know,
right. So that's a good practice to stay in to make sure that if you do have that internal eye, to let
mm-hmm.
them know.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. In other words, spend your time on the important stuff. You know, I could be causing chatter. I could be causing you to have to spend extra cycles. I want those to be as few as possible so that you're really focused on finding, you know, real malicious actors. You know, tag me as this is what I'm doing. You guys can look at it, you know, all you like, after the fact, offline, auditing, whatever. I'm fine with that. I was asked to do this, and so I started doing it. And also I let my management know when I notified the incident response team. I let my management know that I was doing this, and they knew what they had asked me to do. So I'm covered, but it still could have been on incident response systems as an alert. Better me. Oh, here's a great example. It has very little to do with this, but let's say that there are two people involved in, I don't know, a domestic dispute at your house. When the police show up, who gets favorable consideration? So, say husband and wife fighting over, I don't know, the cat, and the police walk in. Who gets favorable consideration? Any ideas? Okay, the answer is the first person who called 911. The first person who called is considered to be the person bringing the complaint. So they are responding to that person's complaint. So don't hesitate to dial 911 if you're in some sort of a situation that could have legal implications and involve law enforcement. Get on that phone fast and stay on the phone. Oh, okay, yep, I hear you, 911 dispatcher. Yep, here they come. Do it. Do it. You by not being the second or the last person to notify, you actually are considered to be more favorably treated because you're the one that called in the incident. So that's what I was doing. I was just saying, you know, this may be nothing, but I think that I may have tripped some of your tripwires. And I'm just letting you know, here's what I'm doing. And I gave them everything because the tripwires would use things like my IP address, my MAC address, because of the packets that are all going through the networks. All of the packets contain your IP address, and in some cases with IPv6, your MAC address. So I gave it all to them, said, you may see me. This is what I'm doing. And CC my boss. No problem. Okay. Any questions? Fun stuff. Yes, sir. Norman.
Yeah, I have a question. So, can you maybe next time talk about? I'm just really interested, like in those how organizations like protect their network system and people work from home. Like, for example, I know some companies give people like their laptops, or like they get like those small firewalls, hardware firewall that is connected on your network, and then so the company organization all traffic goes through that firewall, and they know what you're doing, and it's kind
Right.
of. So can we do something about that? Talk about that? I'm just recently I was learning something about that, and it's really interesting. Like, so
Well,
we talk about
it's possible to talk about it generally, but if I get down to the specifics, I'm literally describing a procedure that's in use, or procedures or configurations or whatever that are in use at my organization. So I'm going to have to try and find things that are out in, the World Wide Web to draw from.
Yeah, I mean, I was checking my firewall, and so like they talking about like intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system, and they're like talking how like those systems can detect and prevent like attacks, and all those like firewalls or like routers, they have those.
Sure, we can talk about IDS and IPS.
Yeah,
That's easily done. Yep. And they are different, and there are different ways that systems work. And by the way, no one system is entirely foolproof.
Yeah.
No one system's going to work 100% of the time, because as soon as somebody puts something together, somebody figures out how to get around it. It's a cat and mouse game, but you got to be the cat. So yeah, sure, we can talk about that. IDS, IPS. I can share a little bit about what DoD used to do when I was there 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. I'm sure it has changed, but they had a very novel approach in the Department of Defense, because they literally enabled all of the computers on the network to look at each other. It was called rogue detection. And they would basically look at all the computers in, let's say, my office. Every computer would be watching every other computer, and if a computer started to do something like lots of data or weird ports being announced or whatever, these computers in this particular area would alert and say, this thing doesn't look right. That's all they could do, but they were little tiny intrusion detection systems, and all they were designed to do is alert if they saw something else in their local network that was acting abnormally. It's called rogue detection, and it took a lot of work on DoD's part to do that.
Is that because they have to be all the time and watching that? Because I know when I check my firewall, I can see all my devices, and same thing, like for each device I can see like what's going on, so I can monitor like the traffic like for that device. So I guess something similar that you just.
Yeah, the challenge is you're looking at your local network, your house that you are aware of, and all the devices in the house that you know about, and you said you can see what they're doing. But can you, with that quick glance, tell if what they're doing is right or wrong? No. That's the difference. Yeah. That's the difference between network monitoring and intrusion detection.
I mean, I get a message, like I get email. I can get email, I can get notification if something that's like intrusion detection system, and I have IPS also. I hope it works. But yeah, I mean, I can like respond like I can see like all the time, like what's going
Right.
on, like, you know.
Yep. So, yes, we can talk about that. I think it's been a while since we've covered that. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I appreciate everything, and I am loving every minute of this. I will review it. I do have to drop off the line. I didn't want to leave without exiting.
Fair enough. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop our recording, and